With 2025 officially coming to an end, I want to start a new tradition on this channel where I close out the year ranking my top 50 roller coasters that I've ridden. 2025 was by far my most successful year when it came to riding coasters, as I started this year having ridden 78 different roller coasters and am now finishing the year with 213 coaster credits. I did a ton of traveling this year, and even though my bank account might be hurting a little bit, I had so much fun doing it, and so I have zero regrets. In my lifetime as a coaster enthusiast, I've ridden coasters from the Midwest, Northeast, Southeast, and even West Coast of the United States. But I am missing a few big ones like all of the Florida parks except for Disney World, and I'm also missing Texas, and I've never even left the United States, so there's so many other coasters for me to get on. But don't you worry, I'll be getting to all kinds of different rides soon. Now this video will be part 1 of 2, so we're going to be going through number 50 down to number 26 in my rankings. But trust me, all of these rides are great, and I absolutely adore them if they're even on this list. And if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe so that you don't miss part 2. And real quick, before we dive into this list, I just want to say that these are my personal opinions, and I'm sure you guys will not agree with all of them, which is exactly why they're just opinions and not facts. Everyone has unique ways to rank coasters, and I'll do my best to explain why I've placed each ride where it is. Feel free to share your opinions and thoughts in the comments below, but let's try to keep it civil because at the end of the day, we're all just comparing roller coasters for the fun of it. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Alright, kicking this list off, I just want to run through a couple of my stats from the year and then give you guys a couple quick honorable mentions. These stats are all coming from the Log Ride app, which I highly recommend to any coaster or theme park enthusiast. Now this year I rode 171 different roller coasters with a total of 574 coaster rides. I went upside down 881 different times on roller coasters, and I know that's accurate because I log my ride right after I get off every time. I also traveled 391 miles while on coaster track this year. My most ridden coaster of the year was El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure, racking up 33 rides in just 2 days. Alright, now I actually have every roller coaster I've ever ridden ranked, all 213, so these honorable mentions will be number 55 through 51 in my list. My honorable mentions are Impulse at Knoebels, Woodland Run at Kentucky Kingdom, Fahrenheit at Hershey Park, Steel Curtain at Kennywood, which actually was my 100th roller coaster, and Silver Bullet at Knott's Berry Farm. All of these rides are super fun, and I could definitely see them rising up a little higher on this list, but I'd probably need some more rides on them to justify them being in my top 50. I only got one ride on Impulse, Steel Curtain, and Fahrenheit, so I know a lot of you guys might really like those rides, but from the one ride I got on them, I just didn't find them impressive enough to crack the top 50. But Silver Bullet is actually so underrated, being glass smooth, having a fun wave turn with some airtime, and it ends off with a super tight helix that pulls all the blood in your body to your feet. Now to start off this list, at number 50, we have the Morgan Hypercoaster Steel Force at Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania. This 200-foot or 61-meter roller coaster with a 205-foot drop feels like Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point if it was smooth and had floater airtime instead of that abrupt ejector. But we'll get to that one later. The speed on this thing is so much fun, and it actually has some pretty good floater airtime towards the end of the ride. Coming up next at number 49, I have my second favorite B&M invert being Afterburn at Carowinds. Despite opening over 25 years ago, in 1999, this ride is glass smooth and so intense. This era of B&M inverted coasters is unmatched. From the insanely whippy batwing to the awesome sense of speed in those trenches, I absolutely adore this roller coaster. And its 6 inversion madness makes me so excited to ride Montu at Busch Gardens Tampa, which has similar elements to this ride with just a little bit of a longer ride duration. At number 48, we have another hypercoaster, but this time by Swiss manufacturer Bolliger and Mabillard, the same company that built Afterburn. This was actually B&M's first hypercoaster, being Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens Williamsburg and, of course, Williamsburg, Virginia. This coaster has an incredible setting through the woods, which leads to such a surreal night ride experience. This is my least favorite of the B&M hypercoasters that I've personally ridden, since it definitely has the weakest floater airtime of the bunch, but in the back row, that pre-drop leading to that 210-foot drop does have some kick, and this coaster really is just pure fun. Not to mention, this helix turnaround is pretty sweet, and I love when you get close down to the river. For number 47, we're going back to Pennsylvania Pennsylvania, but this time for Twister at Knoebels in Ellisburg. This wooden coaster opened in 1999 and was built in-house by Knoebels with the help of legendary wooden roller coaster designer John C. Allen. I only managed to get one ride on this thing this summer since we only had a few hours at this park, but man was it fun. I remember it having a few solid moments of airtime and tons of great lateral G-forces. If I got another ride on it, maybe it would rise higher up in my list, but I don't really have the best memory of it other than it being incredibly smooth. At number 46, I have my first defunct coaster on this list, closing in 2025 with the park being Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America in Bowie, Maryland, near Washington, D.C. Rest in peace, or pieces I should say. I rode this coaster just a few weekends before it closed, and I was so glad I got on it because at my first visit to the park it was closed. This is definitely my least favorite of the Intamin hypercoasters that I've ridden, but it was still a pretty fun coaster. Getting on it was pretty difficult because it just kept breaking down for us, not allowing the back two rows restraints to release when it came back to the station. But we did manage to get on the last two trains of the day, which was at about noon. Classic Six Flags America. The drop was not steep enough to offer any notable airtime, but it did have some solid speed, and there actually was some surprising floater on the large camelbacks. There was also some cool flowjector airtime moments on the final hills towards the back as you got yanked over them, and the new trains with the T-bar restraints were pretty sweet. You could definitely tell that Intamin was still figuring out how to make a hypercoaster layout when they built this thing, as there were a few awkward moments of straight track and the long helixes, but it was an enjoyable coaster. There also is a clone of this ride at Darien Lake up in New York, which actually is the original, and it interacts with the nearby water, so it'll definitely be fun to experience that one day. Oh, and funny story, on my last ride ever, I was on the right side of the train, and on the first low to the ground turn, I stuck my hand out, as I often do on low to the ground coaster moments, to see how close I could get to the ground. But this time, I actually smacked the grass. Now, there is enough clearance to not smack the actual ground, but since Six Flags America wasn't really keeping up with their lawn care in those final months, I was able to get a pretty sweet moment where I did touch the grass. And no, it didn't hurt, don't worry. Next up at 45, we have a controversial ride to say the least. It's the beast at my home park, Kings Island in Mason, Ohio. This coaster was also built completely in-house by Kings Island, opening in 1979, which is just absurd. Legendary wooden coaster designer Charles Dinn did oversee parts of this project, but the Dinn Corporation was never officially involved in the engineering. Now, this is one of the most famous and polarizing coasters in the world, featuring a whopping 7,361 feet or 2,244 meters of wooden coaster track through the woods of Mason, Ohio, making it the longest roller coaster in not only North America, but the entire Western Hemisphere. And it is also the longest wooden roller coaster in the world. This coaster is where it's at on this list because it isn't really the most forceful, but it does offer a super fun experience, tearing through the woods. It's also super famous for its night rides, and I cannot recommend them enough. This pitch black journey through the woods is one of the most unique experiences in the world. And even though I've done it dozens of times now, I can't help but smile like a little kid on Christmas for the entire 5-minute journey every night ride that I get. The Gravity Group retrack this season was incredible, and towards the back there is actually some floater airtime on the first drop and second hill now, which shot this ride up for me, and I can't wait to experience the retrack next season too. Also, this double helix ending after the second lift hill is so legendary, having you pinned up against the side of the train. This coaster seems to rise up in my rankings more and more each year, and I hope this continues as Kings Island and Gravity Group do a great job maintaining it. Next up at number 44, I have what is probably one of the hardest roller coasters I've ever had to rank, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot. Now, my good friend Matt, who you guys don't know yet because my lazy ass is so far behind on editing vlogs, but you will know him in a few months when I finally get my California vlogs posted. Well, this coaster is actually his favorite roller coaster of all time. He credits that to this being the most overall fun roller coaster due to the backwards launch, dynamic rotating cars, amazing pre-show, insanely immersive space effects, great use of screens to make it look like you're flying next to the Guardians, and the groovy songs blasting in your ears. That was a lot. You know, this ride really does have it all. My good friends and coworkers at Orion at Kings Island, Kyle and Jess, also have it at their number 5, and maybe it's because the two of them, along with Matt, did a little bit of drinking around the world before they rode it, but I definitely see where they're coming from either way. This thing is like nothing I've ever ridden, being so much fun and a pretty good coaster itself, with by far the most immersive theming I've ever seen on a roller coaster. Next summer when I make it back to Epcot, I could foresee it rising a lot higher, but from what I remember from my rides in 2022, I'm just gonna keep it right here. Next up at number 43, we have my favorite B&M inverted coaster, the 6 inversion 190-foot monster Alpengeist at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Now, I went to this park not expecting too much from this coaster, and it absolutely blew me away. This ride is pretty smooth, and I adore the massive first half, full of high-speed moments reaching speeds up to 67 miles per hour. Oh god, that stupid number. Or 107 kilometers per hour through the trees, and then going up into these massive inversions. Since you're on top of a hill, when you emerge from the trees, you just see the world around you upside down and so far below you. It's so cool. I also love these low-to-the-ground ski-themed moments, and even though the second half is kind of slow, I personally like it because it offers a completely different experience than the first half, as the first half is all about high-speed intensity, and the second is full of hang-time-filled inversions and this super tight helix. I know the mid-course brake run hits insanely hard, but the rest of the ride is honestly too good for me to even care. Oh, and if you thought I was going to talk about this ride without bringing up the best inversion on any invert, this mental cobra roll, then I had you fooled, because this thing blew my socks off with each and every ride. Now, I'm not usually the biggest fan of cobra rolls, especially the one on Raptor at Cedar Point, since it has a lot of headbanging, but this one was comfortable and so much more whippy than any I've ever experienced. If you're towards the back of the train, you can't really see when it's about to start, and rising up out of the woods is so disorienting for some reason. The snap into this inversion is one of the most aggressive elements I've ever felt, and it's so cool. Plus, during the cobra roll, I had no idea where in the park I was. I loved how disorienting it is. If you can't tell, I really like that ride. But next, for number 42, we're moving to the South Carolina side of Carowinds, the only park in the US that's in 2 states, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. We're traveling down here for a B&M hypercoaster that this year was running way better than I remembered it. I'm of course talking about Thunderstriker, which used to be named Intimidator before they lost the rights to the Dale Earnhardt theming. Now this ride used to be nicknamed Intimidator because it has a ridiculous amount of trims, and I mean a ridiculous amount. But this summer, I got multiple rides on it during my visit to Carowinds, and none of the trims ever hit, which was awesome. I'm a big fan of these hypers with the staggered seating trains because they're about double the length of the typical hyper trains, causing the back row to have ridiculous amounts of whip. The airtime off the drop and dropping off these big camelbacks is so sweet if you have some good airtime room, and man, that floater hits. This thing is just slammed in the parking lot though, and it does have some lackluster elements like this pretty forceful first element and mediocre ending, but the moments of floater airtime it has are very fun, and this new paint job looks pretty awesome. At number 41, we have yet another B&M hypercoaster, this time being Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey. Now, a lot of people swear by this coaster, saying they get insanely strong airtime on it, and I can't really say that I got that experience. Don't get me wrong, the setting is awesome. Looking out at the water and the floater airtime it has is definitely still pretty solid, but in the first half, I found it to be on the weaker side. The ending few hills did have some pretty decent floater though, and this upward helix was probably the best part of the ride, pulling some really surprising positive G-forces. I did gray out here on most rides, so that was pretty sweet. I also love how this ride has no seatbelts, so you really can experience that airtime, even if it isn't as strong as other B&M hypers. I do like this a little more than Thunderstriker though, because the mix of the setting and more creative layout pushes it slightly ahead. For number 40, we're going to move maybe 500 feet to the left, also at Six Flags Great Adventure for Jersey Devil Coaster, the Rocky Mountain Construction single rail roller coaster. Now, this is my least favorite RMC coaster, but it's still a super good ride. This thing is way better in the back due to that awesome 130-foot, 87-degree drop, some fun inversions, and solid airtime moments. However, this coaster doesn't feel nearly as out of control or powerful as the other RMC coasters that I've ridden, and it's also surprisingly a little rough. You can really feel the transition between each track piece as you feel a bump each time you go onto a new piece of track. It is still a really fun ride with good pops of airtime, and since I never got on King Ka, it's actually my third favorite coaster at Great Adventure. For my second favorite coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure, we again have to move a few thousand feet over to the brand new for 2025 Vekoma Super Boomerang Flash Vertical Velocity. This ride was way more fun than I was expecting it to be, offering a cool color scheme, onboard audio, punchy launches, a stomach-dropping vertical spike, some of the best hang time I've ever experienced, and an awesome pop of backwards airtime. I was really sleeping on this ride going in, and going both forwards and backwards on it was just such a fun experience through the solid inversions and good pop of airtime. This ride is just pure fun, and the forces were actually pretty surprising. Just make sure you rope drop it, because since it only has one train, this coaster gets some monstrous lines on busy days. Finally taking a break from Six Flags Great Adventure, for number 38, we have yet another new for 2025 Vekoma roller coaster, this time being Siren's Curse at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. Now, if you saw my vlog vlog and initial reactions to this coaster in July, the recency bias had me thinking that this was a top 25 roller coaster. And don't get me wrong, it is really good. But after getting a few more rides on it in October, I realized I was overrating it. Again, the color scheme, light package, onboard audio, and theming here is just awesome. And just like Flash, this ride is glass smooth and has some surprisingly good elements. The tilt was actually way better than I thought it'd be, and this ride has insanely flowy transitions between elements. The experience is very enjoyable. The airtime isn't the strongest, but I love this ride as a whole, and Cedar Point did an amazing job with it. Oh, and the night rides are incredible, but if you want my full in-depth thoughts on every part of this roller coaster, go check out my Siren's Curse review I have posted on this channel after this video. Coming in at number 37, we have the only roller coaster built by Gerstlauer on this list, being the 150-foot or 46-meter tall Infinity Coaster Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California. I was not ready for how much I was going to adore this roller coaster. From the beachy color scheme to the awesome light package done by the goats at KCL Engineering, this coaster is just so cool. I really wish more parks would build these things instead of B&M dive coasters, because it offers the same holding brake effect with a vertical or even beyond vertical drop, and they only have a lap bar. Not to mention Hang Time has 5 much more forceful and hang time filled inversions than anything on a B&M dive coaster. And don't even get me started on the ejector airtime off the first drop, and on this hill right here, it's actually super good. And I feel like not enough people talk about this coaster. Oh, and the headrests of your seat looking like surfboards is such a nice detail. I really ate that up. This ride fits perfectly in the boardwalk section of Knott's, and it is infinitely better than the boomerang that it replaced. Coming in at number 36, we have to fly back across the country to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, for our first Great Coasters International wooden coaster on this list, being Thunderhead at Dollywood. Now, I haven't been to this park since 2022, and admittedly, I don't remember this coaster that well, so I wouldn't be surprised if it rises a little higher once I get back on it. But from what I remember, this ride had amazing pacing as it reaches speeds up to 54 miles per hour or 86 kilometers per hour through its 3,230 foot or 984 meter twister layout. Thunderhead has some sweet pops of airtime, good laterals, and a super cool station flyby. I don't remember it being too rough, but it definitely wasn't glass smooth or anything. At number 35, I have the only Chance Hyper GTX in operation, the small but mighty 100-foot tall lightning run at Kentucky Kingdom in, you guessed it, Louisville, Kentucky. This coaster is only 2,500 feet or 762 meters long, but it offers some incredible moments of ejector airtime. Now, don't expect an RMC, but it does feel somewhat similar to one of their smaller iBox coasters. I really want to see some smaller parks purchasing more of these rides, because it offers a really good standout airtime filled roller coaster for pretty cheap, and it fits in a tiny footprint. Oh, and if you ever get the chance to visit Kentucky Kingdom in the rain, both this and Wind Chaser run like they're on hyperdrive. I highly recommend it. For number 34, we're flying right back across the country to Southern California for Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, but this time for Wonder Woman Flight of Courage, the RMC Raptor. Now, this coaster is almost an exact clone of Jersey Devil Coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure, which was 6 spots lower at number 40. Now, that might come as a surprise to you guys, but let me explain. It's not just because this coaster has an extra hill and turn at the end of the ride, or just because it has added theming whilst in line. And while both of those things are pluses, this coaster just runs a decent amount better than Jersey Devil in my experience. Every positive thing that I said about Jersey Devil Coaster applies here, except it was running a lot smoother and the mid-course brake run did not hit on any of our 3 rides. On Jersey Devil Coaster, the trims hit pretty hard on the mid-course, making all of these hills on the final lap airtimeless. But on Wonder Woman, the mid-course doesn't hit, so it flies around this turn and offers some good airtime on all of these final hills. I also just thought that Wonder Woman was running slightly better in the first half, and the combination of that and the much smoother experience gives this one the edge. It's not nearly as rough as Jersey Devil. And don't get me wrong, Jersey Devil is not unbearably rough, it is just something that's noticeable. At number 33, I have the 25-year-old Custom Coasters International wooden coaster opening in 2000, The Legend at Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana. This coaster features a 113-foot or 34-meter drop and has great pacing as it reaches speeds up to 59 miles per hour or 95 kilometers per hour. The Legend has a few pretty sweet pops of airtime, but it really stands out for having some of the most sustained lateral G-forces on any roller coaster in the world. This double helix has you absolutely pinned to the left side of the train. If you're riding next to someone, you better like them because you guys are going to get real close. The minimal banking on some of these turns lead to some awesome laterals, and the layout is overall just really sweet. This coaster does have a few potholes and admittedly is not the smoothest on this list, but to me it really isn't that bad unless you marathon it for a little while. Next up is a coaster that a lot of you might think should be higher on this list, but from the rides I remember getting on it, I think this is a fair placement. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore all of these coasters, coasters. I mean, the legend is phenomenal. At number 32, I have Storm Runner, the hydraulic launch coaster at Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Now, this ride does have an incredible 0 to 72 mile per hour launch in just 2 seconds, which is incredibly punchy. It also does have 3 fun inversions, including that one-of-a-kind flying snake dive, even though Iron Rattler at Six Flags Qiddiya kinda has one, so it's not as one-of-a-kind anymore. Whatever. There is some awesome ejector airtime rising up into the top hat in the front rows and dropping off in the back rows. This coaster is pretty short, but it is pure adrenaline the whole experience. The Intamin hydraulic launch coaster is basically a perfect model, aside from its reliability issues of course, and I hope Hershey Park can keep this ride open for many years to come, because it is truly one of the best launches in the entire country. Staying in Hershey Park for their second hypercoaster, number 31 is Candemonium, the 210-foot or 64-meter tall B&M hypercoaster. Now I know a lot of you guys might find that surprising to be over Storm Runner, but from the rides I got during my time at Hershey Park, I remember preferring Candemonium slightly. Before I get into it, I do have to address the name, because in 2020 I actually visited the B&M steel manufacturing plant in Batavia, Ohio, and saw the blue Orion track and pretty sick chocolate colored track for this coaster before either of them were announced. But once Candemonium was announced, its name became a pretty hot topic in the coaster community, as many of you clowned on it for being a lazy attempt at incorporating candy into the name. But I honestly don't really hate it. The queue line for this coaster is cool, and I like how each of the 3 trains are themed to different chocolate, being Hershey Kisses, Kit Kats, and Reese's. This being the first coaster you see at Hershey Park makes so much sense, but it does result in it often getting a long line. Now this coaster has a pretty steep drop for a hyper at 77 degrees that offers some awesome floater in the back row, followed by a massive camelback providing a good 4 seconds of sustained floater airtime. The speed hole on this ride is a B&M Masterclass, resulting in sustained flowjector airtime. Although it is a little worse than the one on Orion, it's still great. I also love this outward banked element, especially in the back right seat. You get some pretty fun airtime. Oh, and I adore the finale of this coaster as well, finishing out the ride with a helix wrapping around the Hershey Kiss fountain. This coaster is so smooth, and I found it super easy to get airtime room. I am a sucker for B&M clamshell restraints and strong floater airtime, and even though I've yet to ride Mako at SeaWorld Orlando, I imagine that ride to be a superior version of Candemonium. Now I know a lot of coaster enthusiasts don't really love this ride, but I heard it was running better than ever this summer, and I can attest that the airtime was much better than all of the other B&M hypers thus far on this list. With that being said, there is still one B&M hyper I prefer to this one, but you'll have to watch part 2 of my top 50 to find out which one that is. For number 30, we're once again returning to Six Flags Magic Mountain for my favorite flying coaster, the 170-foot or 52-meter monster, Tatsu. This coaster is actually so much fun, and since you're up on top of a hill, it feels like you're flying around on top of the world. You go through 3 awesome inversions, looking around at all of the coaster tracks surrounding you, and beyond that is the beautiful California mountainscape. After all of that, you end off the ride with the 4th and final inversion, being the massive and demented pretzel loop. I love this element as you dive headfirst from pretty high up in the air and then land on your back once you reach the ground, feeling an insane amount of positive g-forces crushing down on you. This sensation is so impressive, and it feels like the weight of the world is on your chest for a few seconds. I love this ride, and I can't wait to get back on it someday. Staying in Southern California, number 29 is Accelerator, the world's first hydraulic launch coaster. Now this coaster doesn't have any inversions after the top hat like Storm Runner, but the launch definitely felt more powerful, hitting 82 miles per hour or 134 kilometers per hour in just 2 seconds. And that 205-foot or 62-meter top hat is awesome. Something about this ride just made me love it even more than Storm Runner, as it reminded me so much of Top Thrill Dragster. You're whipped up into that top hat, slow down for some awesome views of the surrounding area, and you then actually get some pretty awesome ejector airtime on the way down. The bank turns that follow are super fun as well, as you race around the sky. I love the color scheme on this ride, meant to look like a sunset, and it's just one of the most enjoyable coaster experiences to me, even if it is only 22 seconds. That launch straight out of the station was breathtaking every ride. I love it. At number 28, I have another launch coaster, but it's on this list for a completely different reason than Accelerator. While Accelerator's launch is the best part of the ride, this coaster's launch honestly might be the worst. I'm talking about Copperhead Strike, the Mock Rides multi-launch coaster at Carowinds. Now this coaster may suffer from having one of the slowest and least punchy launches I've ever ridden, but it's okay because the launch is really only there to get the ride up to speed, and the elements that follow are so uniquely good. This coaster has the best hang time of any coaster I've ridden, as you almost come to a stop upside down during this first loop and cutback. This coaster also has some surprisingly intense moments of ejector airtime, and this one positive G-filled turn that caused me and my friends to all gray out. Oh, and I love this JoJo roll out of the station with just a lap bar. All of the hang time on this ride is honestly a little scary. Definitely make sure nothing is in your pockets, or if you have zippers, zip them up, because this hang time will steal your personal belongings. I'd love to see more of these rides be built in America. Oh, and of course we can't talk about Copperhead Strike without mentioning that incredible entrance sign. I mean, just look at that. This ride has some pretty sweet theming for a Six Flags, or formerly Cedar Fair park, and the little show scene in the barn before the launch is a very nice touch. Oh god, okay, for number 27, we have a controversial coaster to say the least. And a lot of you are probably going to agree with this placement, but I know some of you have insane love for this ride, and you will be triggered that it's not higher. I'm talking about the world's first Giga Coaster, Millennium Force, at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. Now, don't get me wrong, I really love this ride. It has probably the most beautiful lift hill and drop of all time as you race up that 310-foot or 94-meter cable lift, surrounded by Lake Erie and so many roller coasters. You can also see Canada from the top of this lift, which is an awesome thing to point out to your family and friends. The sense of speed on this coaster is incredible as you reach speeds up to 93 miles per hour or 150 kilometers per hour, racing through the trees across Millennium Island. The first drop offers some fun airtime, and this first overbank usually makes me gray out. I also love the low to the ground moments and the incorporation of the tunnels. Both of these big camelbacks offer some weak but still fun floater airtime. Oh, and this speed hill offers some awesome flowjector airtime. This ride is so much fun, but the abundance of forceless overbank turns does prevent it from climbing any higher on my list. Don't get me wrong, I love this ride, and the station music is absolutely iconic to anyone who likes coasters. It's actually my ringtone. But I do just think there's 26 more forceful coasters ahead of it. And to end off part 1 of this video, we're staying in Sandusky, Ohio for number 26, another world's first, the first coaster over 200 feet, Magnum XL 200, opening in 1989. Now, I know it's going to annoy some of you that I have this above Millennium Force, and admittedly, the two have gone back and forth a lot for me this season. But after my final rides in October, I decided that the intensity of Magnum's airtime causes me to slightly give Magnum XL 200 the edge. It blows my mind that Arrow was able to build this coaster in the era before most of engineering was done with computers, but that did result in some ridiculously shaped triangle bunny hills at the end of the ride. These hills offer some of the strongest airtime I've ever experienced. This ride is basically a giant Arrow mine train, sharing the same small and not very comfortable lap bars as the mine train coasters. It does run a little bumpy, but honestly, the ride isn't that rough. The worst part of the ride roughness-wise is this figure 8 style turnaround, which for some reason is by far the most janky part of the ride, but this doesn't really hinder the experience for me. The reason some people and a lot of the GP call this coaster rough and don't really love it is because the airtime on these final hills can be incredibly painful as it's so abrupt and strong. But in most rows, it's so much fun. And I also ride roller coasters as a hobby and pay attention to the forces, so you guys can call me weird for that if you want, but I just love how intense the airtime is. As you crest over each of these final hills, you are all of a sudden launched up into the lap bar. It's one of the most unique experiences I've ever felt, as it's not a gradual rise up into the airtime like on a lot of rides, it's just a moment where you're all of a sudden yanked up out of your seat. The magic seat on this coaster is row 3, offering the strongest and, be warned, most painful ejector airtime on any of the 213 roller coasters that I've ridden. It admittedly is almost too much for me, so I typically ride this coaster towards the back for some more whip over the hills and more comfortable yet still great airtime. But I definitely would recommend giving row 3 a try because it truly is an insane experience. Oh, and an elite Magnum tip. My strategy for this coaster is to try to get a little room between you and the lap bar if possible, and then make sure your seatbelt is super tight to your body. Throughout the ride experience, hold the lap bar up, and then if you're able to do this, the airtime is not nearly as painful because instead of slamming your thighs into the lap bar, the seatbelt will be the main thing holding you. I don't know if that even makes sense, but trust me, the airtime on this ride is just awesome. This coaster also offers some great views of the lake and even has a few solid moments of airtime before the return run, like on this hill right here. This roller coaster is truly unique, and I guarantee that we will never see something like it again, and that's why I love it so much. That is going to conclude part 1 of my top 50 roller coasters. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you guys agree with me or if you're absolutely furious with my opinions on these giant thrill machines. Also, let me know any thoughts you have on these rides, and make sure you stay tuned for part 2, because every ride in that video is at least double as awesome as the ones in this video. If you guys enjoyed this or found it entertaining or informative in any way, make sure you drop a like below and subscribe so that you don't miss part 2. I should have part 2 up in less than a week after this one, so by the time you're watching this, it could already be out. Make sure you go check it out if you want to. I hope you guys all have an incredible day, stay positive, and good luck in 2026, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.